Morning from Terry here, D-Lab. On the bench this morning I have a black face Fender Princeton with gain issues. Lack of, that is. Let's see what's going on. Alright, let's scan the chassis. Right off the bat, replacement power transformer. Looks like it's been modified to fit. Got a 5AR4 rectifier tube, pair of 6V6s. Appears to be the original output transformer and original filter cap. Oh, also, it's got a 2-prong power cord. We're going to have to upgrade that for sure. Here's the front panel. It's got a little bit of battle scars. Original knobs. Looks like the original input jacks. Inside, eyelet board looks untouched. Pretty much original. This resistor's not. And you can see the carving around the power transformer when they installed the replacement. That's a bummer. Alright, let's put a signal into it and hook it up on the scope. Alright, initial test. I'm using my leader audio generator set at about 100 millivolts input. Got a scope monitoring the signal across my little dummy load resistor. Just crank her up and see what we get. So that's full volume. As you can see, there's absolutely no breakup, but it's got a clean signal, so that's a good sign. More than likely, we got some dried up caps, including that old original filter cap. Alright, so let's measure the DC voltages on the main filter cap. So here's the input to it, 430. I'm just going to dance around to these other sections. Make sure they're alive, which they all appear to be. Now, what I'm going to do is go over to AC. We're going to look at the AC content on that filter cap, which you would want to be low, right? Because it's a filter cap. Got about 4 volts there. This one's not cooperating with me. Maybe it is. Okay, looks good. It's kind of dancing around a little bit. But it appears as though the filter cap is doing its job. But that doesn't mean that it's not leaking. Being the original, my guess is it is leaking, pulling down the DC content, and the rest of the amp is suffering in gain and performance. So I routinely change out the filter caps on these amps. Regardless of how they check, they're old, they need to be replaced. This is my choice filter cap that I put in the Princetons. You can see it's a 525 volt cap, and you note that we had well over 430 on that filter cap, right? So don't go with a 450, you're going to be pushing it. Especially if the power transformer has been changed. I'm sure the original one was not rated that high, but we're going to leave this power transformer in at this time. Alright, plan of action. I'm going to change the main filter cap. I'm going to replace this resistor and get the right one in there, and we're going to change the negative bias filter cap. Then we will retest and see what that does to the gain. So to get the filter cap out quickly and also remember where the leads went, I get in here, I clip the terminals off right at the cap, leaving them in place. Then I'll take a high power soldering iron, heat up these tabs, and lift them up, and the cap will pop right out. Alright, she's loose. You see all my flying leads around there. Now it's a simple matter of getting these tabs bent up so that I can drop her out. There she goes. Alright, one note before you put in your filter cap, you see the little half moon emblem there? That's the main section, okay? So you want to make sure that when you put it in your cap that you orient it correctly. In this case, the wire that you see to the right was the main feed, and that needs to go back to the half moon. Then the other three will just fall back on the terminals like they were before. I got the tabs folded over. Make sure everything is out of the way because this guy is super hot and in a pretty bad state of repair. I don't know if old Snozzeramus is going to make it without a new tip here. Getting down there, ready to fail. Anyway, has plenty of heat to do the job. You don't have to put a megaton of solder on here. Just make sure that you see it flow to the chassis. Alright, well next I'm going to cut these old tabs so that I can get the original wiring to fall out of them. Connect up to the filter cap. The reason I do that is these leads are already pretty short. So if you're careful, you can just knock off these tabs, hook the wire back up. I've got the filter cap installed. Leads and resistors are back where they need to be. Get this big monster out of here, which appears to be a 5.1K. That's what I'm reading here. It should be a 1K. So let's get that in, retest it. Alright, everything's installed for the first test. New negative bias cap. This is a 33 microfarad at 160 volt. I always bump those up. The originals were like 25 at 50. I consider these underrated voltage wise and capacitive wise. New filter cap. Got the 1K resistor installed. It's powered up. Time to test again. New caps are installed. Same setup. Let's turn up the volume. Take a look at that scope. So same deal. Can't achieve any breakup, but it's still nice and clean. So the next step, we're going to change out these electrolytics here and retest. Alright, I've changed out those cathode caps. Amp is fired up. Same deal. Let's see if we're getting any more output. Does not appear as though. Once again, still nice and clean. Now the reason I'm doing this piece by piece is so we can see if we get an abrupt change rather than just going in here and shotgunning, okay? So let's take a look at the tubes. You would think that's usually the first thing to check, but I always check them last. Alright, so the tubes checked perfect. So then I thought, man, there's something else going on, and I got the bright idea to take a look in here on the input section. Remember I thought these were the original jacks? Well, I don't think they are, and this is not the original volume pot. That pot should be 1 meg. I'm seeing about 41K. So I'm guessing that somebody replaced it and didn't pay attention to the value, so that's definitely going to kill gain. And then my input, if you look at the schematic, here is the 2 meg scale. From the input jack to ground, you should see approximately 1 megohm. Okay, so I'm going to go right here. Oops. A little over 100K. So I believe something is miswired on the input jack because that simply goes through the 68K resistors. I'll go to that side. And then it goes direct to the 12AX7. So unless there's a hidden resistor I'm not seeing here, I'm guessing that this is miswired and we sure have the wrong volume pot. So I'll change the pot, we'll pull these jacks out and verify their wiring, but I think it's wrong. Alright, solved the mystery on the input jacks. He has positions 1 and 2 flipped. So I just put the jack in channel 2, and now look at our resistance. It's a little over a meg, or well, it kind of bounces around, but anyway, it's 1 meg ohm to ground like it should be. So these are flipped, so if you plug into this jack, this one actually is shorting the 1 meg resistor to ground, causing the low resistance. Okay, so that's solved. Now let's get this volume pot changed. I'll flip these jacks around, check the wiring. Better yet, I'm just going to put in 2 new Switchcraft jacks because I did notice there's some wear on the ground barrel going in. So we'll put in new jacks, get them wired up, new pot, retest. Well, there's that old volume pot. You can see it was far from original. And here were those input jacks, and you're probably wondering, how can you get these wired up in perfect spacing to go back in the amp? Well, it's pretty easy. You just wire it on the front. So when I flip this around, this will be channel 1 and this will be channel 2. So just mount the jacks, do your wiring, slip them in on the back and wire them up. Well, there's our new audio input jacks, new pots installed, things are wired up. Time for a retest. Alright, same deal. Have not changed any of the positions of these controls. We'll just work with the volume. We're input 1, audio generator, same scale of the scope. Here we go. Look at there. Going right off the screen now. Oh yeah. Much more output. I was on the times 1 volt per division, and now we're at 5 volts per division. Lots more gain. I would say the Princeton is ready to rock. Alright, next thing I need to do, get rid of this cord. Get rid of the death cap. We'll put a 3-prong in there, plus got to take care of that ratty connection on the power transformer. So I've got the new grounded power cord installed, and then I'm looking at this fuse holder. Janky City. I'm going to go ahead and replace that. And of course, surprise, surprise, 20 amp nail installed. Doesn't do much good to have a fuse in there, guys, if you don't have the proper rated one. Alright, so the AC power situation is taken care of. I got the grounded cord, new fuse holder, etc. The only thing I didn't check on this thing was the tremolo. So here's our output signal again. That's working. And then we'll bring up the intensity. There it is, boing, boing, boing. There's the speed. So good, that's working. Next step, I've got Tony Kuzmano on the way over here. Typical Princeton, is it, Tony?
No, this is nice, man. This is a hell of an amp.
Yeah.
Hello, it's Tony at D-Lab, and this amp is for a customer named Greg. You got a really hell of a great amp here, Greg. This is not ever really going to sound exactly like a Princeton. This amp is never going to be an overdrivey amp just on its own. It's going to be a great clean sound, big, huge, clean sound for a Princeton. There's no sense in putting a master volume in it because of that. You have all the attenuation you need right here in your volume. I really wouldn't recommend doing that. If you wanted that kind of amp, with a master volume, you need to do it with one of your 6L6 40 watters. If you've got any of those, Terry tells me you've got a pretty decent collection of amps. This really isn't the amp to do that to. I'd keep it the way it is, put it back in its original box. Make sure you got a good enough speaker to handle the extra power that this amp puts out. It does have the beautiful, clean, chimey Fender tone. It's a great amp. This is a hell of a good amp you got here. It must be a 64 or so, 63 or 64. I can't really tell without closer inspection, but Terry's got it all straightened out for you. It's working great. He kept all the things that needed to be kept have been kept, like the Ajax capacitors, and he's fixed all the problems you had with it. I love it. It's a great sounding amp. I don't know what else to tell you. You need to put this amp back in service. If you want, I bet you if you put an overdrive pedal on this amp, this thing will scream with an F. So anyway, there you go.
All right, thanks, man.
See, it took some of that ice pick out of it.
Mm-hmm. So now
Sounds a lot
right?
Yeah, hey Greg, round two. We put a 5Y3 rectifier tube in this thing, took out the GZ34. Actually put a little more sag in it, and now this amp does sound much more Princeton-like. I like it more. It's not putting out as much volume, but it's sweet. It sounds nicer to me, a little smoother and softer.
Give him a little bit of it, yeah. Better, huh?
Yeah, I love that.
All right.
That sounded good before, but man, this sounds even better. Yeah, it's something for you to, I'd say, to experiment with. If you need the volume out of it, you could put the GZ34 in it, but if the 5Y3 sounds softer and it's got a little smoother tone. Really much more Princeton-like. It's not as ice-picky bright.
Charge per hour for this advice, Tony.
$50 an hour.
Oh, great. There goes my profit.